Today is April 20th, 2012, and I am interviewing Lowell Cedric Steward at his home in Oxnard, California. Mr. Steward was part of the Army Air Corps, and his highest rank was a major. He was stationed with the 100th Fighter Squadron, the 12th Air Force, which later became the 15th Air Force. He served at Tuskeegee, Alabama, and Michigan. He served at Naples, Salerno, and Ramitelli, Italy. He received the Distinguished Flying Cross and the Air Medal. My name is Cherie Neal, and I am conducting the interview, and I am part of the Library of Congress Veterans History Project. It is supported by the Conejo Valley chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution. Ed Lynch from Advanta Videography is filming today. Today we are interviewing Lowell Cedric Steward. And Mr. Steward, can you tell us when and where you were born?
I was born in Los Angeles, California in 1919.
What kind of work did your parents do at that time?
My father was a red cap at the Union Station.
Okay. And where did you go to school?
I went to Santa Barbara College.
And before you went to college, what high school did you go to?
I went to Thomas Jefferson High School.
Okay. What kind of student were you? Did you have special interests?
Yes,
And what kind of sports did you play?
basketball and track.
And that was at a time in history where white and black students were separate?
Yes,
Okay. Now, when you went to college, you went to UC Santa Barbara?
UC Santa Barbara.
Okay. And what did you study when you were there?
Medical education.
Okay. And what plans did you have? What did you plan to do with your education?
I planned on teaching.
Okay. Was there any particular reason why you chose University of Santa Barbara?
Oh, yes. It was close to home.
And when you were in Santa Barbara, you said you studied physical education. Did you played sports there as well?
Yes.
Okay. Did you excel in any of those sports?
Well, I was on the basketball team.
Did you have a special role on that team?
Well, I was a captain.
Now, was your team successful?
Yes.
Okay. What did they win?
They won the state championship in basketball.
All right. Now, because they won that state championship, did they go to other states to play games?
Well, I went to Kansas City for a tournament.
Okay. What did you experience because you were black?
They didn't permit blacks to play against whites in Kansas City, Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
So they took me along on the trip, but I wasn't able to play.
Okay. All right. So from there, did you set any kind of records while you were at Santa Barbara?
No,
You
I
played-
set a record in high school.
Okay. Well, okay. Tell me about that.
Well, I set a record in high jump in class B.
Do you remember how high you jumped?
Yes, 6'2 3/4".
Okay. Did you graduate from college at that time? Or
Did I graduate from
from when you went to UCSB, how long were you at UCSB?
3 years?
3 years, okay. Was that before World War II?
Yes.
Okay. So World War II started, and the start of World War II, did that help you make decisions about what you wanted to do?
Yes.
Okay. And what decisions did you make?
Well, I wanted to be a flyer.
But because that time the blacks were separate from the whites, they wouldn't allow you to be a flyer. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. But you went into the Army Air Corps. How was it you were able to do that?
Well, I volunteered to join the Air Force, the basketball team. Went down to join the Air Force, and they took the 4 of the players. They didn't take me.
Right away. Okay.
So we go back home. So I went back home.
As time went by, there became a need for pilots in the service. And what was formed that enabled you to be trained as a pilot?
Well, I signed up to fly, and they sent me to Tuskegee, Alabama.
Okay. Now, what was happening at Tuskegee, Alabama?
Tuskegee, Alabama is where all the black pilots were trained.
Okay. Now, on that base, was that base solely for black people? Or,
Yeah.
Okay, so you were still separate at that time, but you had your own base. How did they select the pilots? What qualifications did you have to become a pilot?
Just a desire to fly.
Okay, and you had a strong desire. Did you have to take a test?
Yes.
Okay, and so you had to score really high on that test.
Yeah.
Correct? Okay. So you were sent there for training. How long did you train?
9 months.
Okay. All right. And then you became part of the Tuskegee Airmen.
Yeah.
Okay. And what rank did you have at that time?
Second lieutenant.
Okay. You were sent overseas to Europe. Where did you go?
I went to Naples.
Okay. And what was happening at Naples that you helped with?
I did a tour of duty at Naples.
Okay.
Protecting the harbor.
Okay. I'm going to change a little bit and ask you about Mrs. Stewart. At what time what year did you marry Mrs. Stewart?
1942.
Okay. Now, was there a way that you honored her when you were flying?
She stayed home and I went overseas.
Okay. Now, did she have a nickname that you gave her?
Yes,
What was that?
that was Tootsie.
The name Tootsie that was painted on the side of his airplane as he would go on a mission. Okay, so you were sent to Italy and you went to Naples to protect the ships there. What kind of airplanes were you flying at that time?
I was flying P-39.
Okay, okay. And were you ever hit in an airplane?
Yes, Marseille Harbor.
Okay. Can you tell us what happened?
Oh yeah, I remember that well. I was flying, they told us that there wasn't but two German planes left. And so I was flying over the harbor and I saw all the ships coming in. Those German planes sneaked up on me. I turned to get away from them, and they hit my plane and knocked a hole in the wing.
And you managed to get back to the base safely?
Yeah, my co-pilot was Clarence Lucky Lester, and he called me on the radio and came out to escort me home. And I flew back to Rome. And I landed the plane in Rome.
All right. Now, when you completed your service in Italy, what rank did you have at that time?
I was a captain
Okay.
when I finished serving.
All right. What responsibilities did you have as captain? What kind of decisions did you have to make?
Well, I was a flight leader, G flight, which is, we had 4 flights, flight A, B, C, and D. And I was the flight leader of flight D, which was at the rear of the group when we went to Ramatelli, which the newspapers back home protested why we were flying harbor patrol in Naples. I flew, I think it was 93 missions in Naples over the harbor protecting the ships coming in. Then we transferred on the other side of Italy to Ramatelli, and then we transferred to another plane. I didn't fly P-39 in Ramatelli. I flew P-47 and P-51. And we escorted bombers flying to Germany.
At the end of that time that you had in Italy, did you receive any particular award?
Oh, I got the Air Medal and the Distinguished Flying Cross.
So when you came back to the United States after your time in Europe, how were you treated when you came back to the United States? Did they, did they honor you? Did they treat you with acceptance because of your accomplishments overseas to the war? What did you encounter?
No, segregation was still in force.
What kind of work did you do after the war? What
Uh,
happened to you? You came back and
became a red cap like my father.
okay. But that changed for you. Your father had been a red cap for 38 years, but you became a red cap, but things changed for you. What did you decide to do?
Well, I wanted to teach school, and I signed up to teach, but they didn't let me teach school.
Why wouldn't they let you teach school?
Well, I don't know.
Okay. So you came back and you were a red cap, and then you looked into being a teacher, but you still pursued something else. Do you remember what that was? Did you have trouble getting a house?
Yes, they wouldn't sell me a house.
All right. So what did you decide to
So
do?
I decided to be a realtor
Now at that time,
and find my own house.
okay, and at that time, black people didn't do that. I mean, they weren't realtors, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay, so what did you decide to do?
I joined the realtors and I sold real estate
Okay,
to find my own house.
and that hadn't been done before,
No,
correct? Okay, all right. And do you remember how long you were in real estate? How many years?
I don't recall.
Okay. But would you say you had a career? Was a long time? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Tell me about your children. You and your wife had children. How many children did you have?
3 children,
Okay.
2 girls and 1 boy.
Have you done things to help keep the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen alive?
Yes, I organized the Los Angeles chapter of the Tuskeegee Airmen.
What about, was there a scholarship foundation?
Well, the Tuskegee Airmen, he gave scholarships to kids that go to school.
Okay. And you were a big part of that.
Yes,
Okay. And was there a book? Were you involved in writing of a book?
yes, I wrote a book called The Lonely Eagles.
Okay. All right. And the movie that was filmed called The Red Tails,
Yeah,
were you asked about your experience to
Yeah.
help make that movie?
I just spoke to George Lucas,
Right.
who wrote the movie.
Okay. March 2007 was a time where the Tuskegee Airmen were recognized for their contributions. Do you remember the award that was received?
Yeah, we received I don't recall.
Okay, all right. But as a large group, you were recognized. How did that make you feel after all of those years to finally be recognized?
Well, I felt very proud of what they did. They organized the flyers be organized as Tuskegee Airman, and they had chapters all over the United States. And I was the organizer of the Los Angeles chapter of the Tuskegee Airmen.
In what ways would you say that your military service helped you later in your life?
Well, that's hard to answer.
Okay. Anything that it taught you, or made you feel a certain way that maybe you hadn't felt before?
Well, I felt very proud to be a Tuskegee Airman.
Good, okay. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us today that I haven't asked you, or maybe something you would like to say about being a Tuskegee Airman? Or
Well, I was organizer of the Los Angeles chapter, and my son is now the president.
so through your that connection, do you still keep in contact with any of the gentlemen that you served with?
Yeah,
Okay. Through that organization. All right.
yes.
When you were flying the airplanes in Italy,
Yeah.
what were some of the most important experiences you had?
Well, the most important thing to me was getting shot. The officers, ground officers, told us there wasn't any but 2 German planes. So I was very careful. We flew over Naples, Marseille Harbor. While I was watching the invasion, the ships, the German plane sneaked up behind me, and as I saw a reflection in the windshield, I saw the plane shooting at me. I turned to evade being shot, and when I turned, my wing dropped down and the plane shot a hole in my wing.
What did you do when you went to protect the bombers that were going into Germany? What was your job?
Well, we transferred to the 15th Air Force, and we was at an air base called Ramatelli. We switched to B-47 and then the B-51, and we protected the bombers that flew to Germany.
Did you engage with German fighters when you were protecting?
Well, no, because we had shot down all the German planes.
I'm not a flyer, but I love fast things. This is a project that came about from a friend of mine who was a photographer that shot for the Air Force. He told me about the story of the red tails, and I said, wow, that's a really good idea for a movie.
Action! We've made it all the way from Tuskegee here to Ramatelli.
I started on this around 20 years ago, and I just stuck with it. It's just been a project that I really wanted to do.
I never even met a girl as beautiful as this plane.
I love B-51s. When I was young, that was the hottest airplane. I can't believe somebody was 19 flying these things and then going into battle. It's pretty stunning and amazing when you think about it.
Junior! Where is he? I can't see him!
Being able to bring this to reality, to be able to actually stand here with the P-51s, with the replication of Ramitelli, it's like the most exciting thing you can do. With digital technology now, we can actually do a real dogfight, the way it should be done.
Come on, man! Take him out!
Where you can follow it and make it dramatic.
All right, got him! Oh, thank you, Lord.
The struggle for African Americans to fight during World War II is part of the story. You can't tell the story without it.
We have a right to fight for our country, the same as every other American.
I wanted to do something a little bit more personal, something about the individual pilots and what they went through and the guys that love to fly. A lot of people wanted to be involved in this project, so we were really lucky.
You kept your word, man.
How are you doing?
It turned out nice.
We got a great, fantastic cast. I was a big fan of The Wire, and that's really how I decided to hire Anthony. I've done my 20 years now. I'm handing the ball off to you. Out of that, Anthony hired a lot of the kids that were in The Wire around in that whole little world. Rick McCallum and I worked together for years and years, and Charles Johnson has also been working on this project for the 20 years.
No, I love to just walk you around and just kind of show you. Walk me around, yeah.
We would have meetings with the Tuskeegee Airmen to make everything as accurate as we possibly could.
You guys look pretty good.
We've had a lot of sessions out of the ranch where we brought all the Tuskegee Airmen together and the cast together, and so they had these weekends and they'd all talk to each other and tell stories and do things so that the actors could get into the real guys and who they are.
Did you feel the responsibility to be somebody to look up to for the kids back at home?
We were the local rock stars of the black community.
The story of the Tuskegee Airmen is a big story, and it's an amazing story. Just like Star Wars, it's a big action picture, lots of dogfights, lots of excitement, but it's basically about a bunch of kids that went through an amazing journey and all came out heroes.
To the last man, we fight! We fight! We fight! We fight! We fight! We fight!
They're the knights of the contemporary age. And I'm hoping that this film is an inspiration to young people today.
On this Martin Luther King Day, we remember a group of African-American warriors from World War II, brave men who broke barriers, created a timeless legacy, and to this day continue to serve as role models. They are the Tuskegee Airmen. A new movie about them hits theaters this weekend. As David Ono reports, dozens of these airmen have roots in L.A. and have left an indelible mark in our community.
Imagine living life 70 years ago as an African American, enduring hate and prejudice. It was part of everyday life. Yet despite that constant disrespect, you still love your country so much, you're willing to fight and die for it. That is a Tuskegee Airman, who not only served this country, but did so above and beyond. The Tuskegee Airmen were a segregated unit of African-American pilots, the first ever to fly for the U.S. military. But to get there, they had to wade through hateful opinions. The military brass felt African-Americans were not capable of being pilots.
The head man of the Air Force, he didn't think Negroes could fly. He said, as long as there's a in the world, he'll never fly an airplane as long as I'm around. There were a lot of Negroes that had more sense than they thought.
They ignored the ill treatment and went on to forever prove that they were not only worthy of being fighter pilots, they were among the very best. Southern California's Lowell Steward Sr. was one of them. Through his son, Lowell Steward Jr., he tells me they did it for one simple reason.
He's told me as to why they were so competent in what they did. Do you remember what you told me? You said, because we love our country.
It was their motivation to prove their doubters wrong.
That's why they fought harder, stronger, faster, just for that right.
Their record so stellar, they earned a Congressional Gold Medal, finally presented to them in 2007. Decades late, but an honor to finally get it.
Very, very satisfying. It really is.
Airman Ted Lumpkin from Los Angeles described receiving the Congressional Gold Medal and how the President of the United States saluted him.
He was saluting us because of the many salutes that we did not receive and should have during our time in the service.
After the war, many of the airmen continued on with their unstoppable attitude, some breaking new ground in the military, others in civilian life. Steward came back to L.A., tried to buy a home, but couldn't because he was black. So he set out to change that, becoming one of the first African-American real estate brokers in the city and the first to help other African Americans buy homes.
I hadn't learned anything about the Tuskegee Airmen in school. It wasn't until I came to Tomorrow's Aeronautical Museum that I learned anything at all about the Tuskegee Airmen.
Sisters Kimberly and Kelly Onyedike are the next generation of pilots, influenced by the Tuskegee Airmen, even though their own history classes have taught them very little to nothing about the pilots. It was here in Compton they not only learned about the airmen, they met them. And now, these teenagers each own aeronautical records. Kelly, the first African-American female to pilot a plane coast to coast, and she did it with the Tuskegee Airmen by her side. And Kimberly is the first to solo 4 different airships in one day. The Tuskegee Airmen inspired them. Their wish now is for more people to know the airmen's story, citing their own accomplishments as their tribute to these World War II heroes.
Instead of living life on the sidelines, the Tuskegee Airmen were able to step out and do something and be something different than what was expected of them. That's the reason why they're my heroes. Like, they proved that when everybody said they couldn't do something, they did it, and they did it the best.
David Ono.
Thanks to that new movie called Red Tails, there are a number of events in town celebrating the Tuskegee Airmen. For more information on the Tomorrow Aeronautical Museum or the LA chapter of the Tuskegee Airmen, go to our website, abc7.com, and we will link you up. Some VIPs attended a special screening of the new action movie Red Tails tonight.
They are surviving members of the famed World War II fighter squadron that broke the color line and helped defeat the Axis powers. Eyewitness News reporter Alex Michelson talked with those Tuskegee Airmen, and he joins us now. Alex?
Well, Michelle, George Lucas wanted to make these images into a movie ever since the late 80s, but studios were so hesitant about its box office appeal, Lucas had to spend $58 million of his own money to make tonight possible. For these men now in their 90s, this is much more than a movie screening. It's their memories from 65 years ago, now finally on the big screen.
We have a right to fight for our country, the same as every other American.
It was well done, well overdue, and it got the message across that I think should have been gotten across 65 years ago.
Red Tails is the story of the Tuskegee Airmen, starring Terrence Howard and Cuba Gooding Jr.
To the last man, we fight! We fight! We fight! We fight!
The real-life Tuskegee Airmen trained in Tuskegee Army Airfield in Alabama. They were a segregated unit of pilots, the first ever to fly for the U.S. military. The 992 graduates flew thousands of missions, shooting down hundreds of enemy aircraft in World War II. But the survivors say that didn't matter much back home.
We were not in the history books. We were not in the school books. It was really to the point it was a secret.
When I think of it, even today, brings tears. I'd rather not even talk about it.
It was that bad.
It was that bad.
It wasn't until 2007 until they finally received a Congressional Gold Medal.
Now we are seeing the Tuskegee Airmen.
Just this week, they were cheered during the Martin Luther King Jr. Parade in Los Angeles.
It's great that so many of them have survived thus far to get the respect that they are due.
Big crowds are lining up to see that film in Baldwin Hills, and a new generation will learn the story almost erased from the history books.
My granddaughter has a lot more respect for me now. She said that she didn't know that I was who I was.
Now, the word hero is often overused in the news business, but in the case of the Tuskegee Airmen, it's the only fitting way to describe them. Reporting live tonight, Alex Michelson, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.